So I don't know if you ever tried to herd cats or not, but if you have, then you know what Anita's been through over the last couple weeks. I was here for practice yesterday, and it was unbelievable, the effort she put in. Then in the first service today, in his debut performance, my little boy Jack decided, he's a cow, decided he didn't want to be over here. He wanted to be over here, so he went and sat under the manger for the duration, pretty much, of the first performance. So pray for me. I don't know. This time of year, there's nothing more exciting than the potential of an unopened gift. I don't know how it is at your house, but at our house, as the calendar turns towards Christmas, one of the things that happens is that the area underneath the tree begins to slowly fill up with packages. A couple weeks ago, there might have been one or two there, but by the end of this next week, there'll be these stacks of different presents, most of which will be for the 2 cows and one of the wise men, and they'll be able to go through and see which ones are theirs. And if you've ever been through that, you know that one of the things you do when you see the presents that have your name on them is you're trying to figure out what's in the box. So you go and you pick it up, and maybe you weigh it to see how heavy it is. Maybe you shake it, try to see if it's something, any kind of sound that might give you a clue as to what's in the package, because it's exciting trying to figure out. But have you ever had this experience? Have you ever opened a gift and then been disappointed with what it was? Now, you'd never show it. I mean, you're too nice for that. But there's a part of you expected one thing, and then you open it, and it was something completely different, and you're kind of disappointed. For example, what you were certain was a PlayStation 5 turned out to be another package of socks and underwear. What you were sure was going to be a new iPad, because it's in that kind of a box, turns out to be a 500-piece puzzle of a Christmas tree, and you don't even like puzzles. Or how about this? What you were certain was going to be the keys to your brand new Lexus that's waiting out in the driveway with the red bow on top, instead is a coupon for 20% off your next oil change in the car that you're currently driving. And so you open it, and it's not what you expected, but you kind of have a forced smile and kind of a fake thank you. But underneath all of that, there is this simmering frustration. You expected one thing, but you got something different. And it's not that you're ungrateful, it's just it's not what you expected, and so it's hard. If you ever experience that, I want you to know you're not the first person to ever go through that. This time of year, there are all sorts of things that can happen that can leave us frustrated. And if you're not careful, that frustration can steal your joy and rob you of what could be the happiest time of year. So if you have your Bible, I want you to turn to Luke chapter 2. This morning, we're going to look at an example of a guy who was very frustrated. If there's ever been anybody that had a right to be frustrated at Christmas, it was Joseph. If you know his story, he expects one thing and he receives something else. And just for a moment, try and put yourself in his shoes. He's got a fiance that he's not sure can be trusted. There's a baby on the way that he's certain is not his. And to complicate it even more, he's been visited by an angel who's delivered this message from God that he's not sure can be believed. And when you read through the New Testament, there's a lot that we don't know about Joseph, but one of the things we do know is the Bible tells us he was an honorable man, which meant he tried to do the right thing. So he's in this impossible situation, so he decides that he's going to make the best of it. He's going to move forward and just do the next right thing. But if you know the story, then you know it wasn't easy. It wasn't smooth sailing. It wasn't like as soon as he made his decision, all the pieces fell into place. Instead, it was one frustrating thing after another. The problem, though, for you and for me is that we've been to a lot of Christmas services, and we've watched all the movies, and we've heard the story so many times that it's like it doesn't register. We read it so fast, and we've heard it so often, it's easy just to skip over the parts that would leave you guessing. Luke chapter 2, verse 1, I want you to listen and let these words sink in. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And everyone went to their own town to register, so Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. You look at the story of Joseph and that first Christmas, there were 5 things that would have left anybody frustrated, but certainly left him extremely frustrated. The first was his uneasy relationship with Mary. Most time, whenever we think of the story, we've sort of got the stained glass window image of Joseph and Mary, and they're always so calm, and they're always so peaceful, and they look like they're just so in love with one another. They gaze across the moonlight. It's like a Hallmark movie. They're going to kiss, and the angels are going to sing, and the snow's going to fall, and they're going to live happily ever after. But my suspicion is that the truth was a little more complicated than that. You got to understand, the Bible, Matthew tells us that when Joseph first heard the news of Mary's pregnancy, his plan was to divorce her quietly, which means he was looking for a way out. And then this angel comes. The only thing that kept that from happening, this angel comes, he gets this direct message from God. But you have to understand, there had to be a part of Joseph. I mean, he was only human. There had to be a part of him that kept thinking, is she really telling me the truth? I mean, none of this sounds like it makes any sense. Is she? I mean, there had to be just this small sliver of doubt. And in the back of his mind, Joseph had to be wondering, is this really going to be, happily ever after? Or is he waiting and thinking, I wish I'd never met this lady, and I can't wait for what comes after this? Let's put yourself in his shoes. That wasn't the only thing that left him frustrated, though. Think about everything else was going on. For another thing, they lived in a dysfunctional political environment. First 2 chapters of Luke mentions 3 different political leaders, all with different levels of authority, who, when combined, created this extremely dysfunctional political environment. The top dog was the Roman emperor, who Luke calls Caesar Augustus. Now, that was a title. His real name was Gaius Octavius. And from everything we know about him, very ruthless, very shrewd political leader. But the other thing that had happened is that he came to power as he continued to consolidate his power and eliminate his enemies. The people living in the Roman Empire began to view him like he was a god. They had elevated this fallen human being, this fallen political leader, to godlike status. And so, as always, the temptation, and rather than trusting in the one true God, they started to put their trust in a guy. And they elevated him and began to worship him like he was a god. Then underneath him, you had King Herod. Not really a king, more of a mid-level administrator. He oversees the area known as Judea, where a lot of these things are taking place. And Herod's number one job is to make sure that Caesar Augustus is happy with the way things are going in Judea. And then underneath them, you had this governor named Quirinius. Again, not really a governor like you think, kind of a mid-level administrator. His job is to oversee this certain area and collect the taxes and make sure that all of the people in the area pay their fair share of taxes. Because you have to remember, at this point in history, the Jewish people are not free. They are a defeated people living in occupied territory. And now, to make it even worse, they're being forced to foot the bill to feed Caesar's armies, build Caesar's buildings, and expand Caesar's empire. And they hate every second of it. That's what this census is really about. It's about making sure that the Romans are squeezing every last penny out of the people that are living under their control. Then you add into the fact the stressful travel conditions that Joseph had to endure. I don't know how it is for you. For a lot of people, you get to this time of year and you look at your calendar and you look at all the places that you're expected to be. You've got to be at grandma's house at this time. You've got to be at church at this time. You've got to be at your other grandma's house at this time. Then you got to go to the in-laws. And it's hard to sort of figure out how to navigate all of that. For us, it's not that bad. For a lot of you, you've got a list of places to be over the next week. And it's a little bit overwhelming. But if you think it's hard to navigate your schedule, and if you think it's hard to figure out how to get to grandma's house on time, imagine going with your wife who's in her last trimester, and you're traveling 70 miles across this rough terrain. Imagine what that would be like. And to make it even worse for Joseph, this was a journey that he never wanted to make to a place that he never wanted to go. I mean, what do you do when you're expected to be home for Christmas and home is the last place you want to be? I mean, what do you do when you find, here's Joseph on this journey, and with every step he knows he's drawing closer to an encounter, to a conversation, to this gathering that he's not even sure he wants to be a part of. And yet there's no way to escape it. And with every step he's getting closer to a next chapter that he's not sure he wants to be a part of. And then there's the challenge, and this is one that some of you have been through, the anxiety of childbirth. Luke kind of downplays this in verse 7 of Luke chapter 2. He sort of summarizes it. He just says, hey, they got there and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. Now he makes it sound so simple, but you know it wasn't that simple. Again, just try and imagine what Joseph is going through. There's no call button. It's not like you can hit the button and the nurses are going to come in. There's no OBGYN who's done this a million times who's going to come in and put everybody at ease. If something goes wrong, there's no NICU. There's no emergency equipment. There's not even a nursery where you can send the baby so that you can get a good night's rest. I mean, there is none of that. Joseph is completely on his own. Just imagine what his heart rate must have been. If you have kids, what was your heart rate when your kids were born? And you weren't even by yourself. At least I hope you weren't. I mean, you can just almost see the sweat coming off his forehead. And here's Joseph, and he's doing his best to stay calm and to keep it all together. But he's right on the verge of what would be a nervous breakdown because it's all on him. And then lastly, there's one more challenge. These are the things that come up this time of year, those unexpected challenges. First, he gets word that he has to travel to Bethlehem with his pregnant wife. And then you know that during the journey, I mean, there's no way to get there. They're walking these 70 miles. And you can just imagine the weather's bad. The roads are in poor condition. The roads are crowded. People are uncooperative. There's limited food. There's limited supplies. I mean, in and of themselves, that wouldn't be such a big deal. But when you combine it all, it starts to have a pretty irritating effect. And then as soon as you get there, you realize that the Hilton and the Holiday Inn are both full. So the only place you can even find a room is one of those hotels that rents rooms by the hour. And even it's full, and all they've got is like a storage building behind it. And that's not the ideal place to have a baby, but when that's the only place you've got to go, that's where you go. That's why it says that when they had the baby, they placed him in a manger. They placed him in a feeding trough because that's the only option you had. What do you do when you find yourself in a place that you never wanted to go in the first place? And then when you get there, it's even worse than you expected. I mean, it's no wonder that Joseph was frustrated. You think about everything that was going on in his life, and all of this is before the baby's even born. I mean, it's not like the stress is going to go down. He's going to be in for years of stress as he tries to raise this baby that he believes is God's son. And it's easy to understand why Joseph was frustrated. Some of you are also frustrated. And if I were to hand you a piece of paper, you could make a list of the things that are frustrating you. It might not be the same as Joseph's list. In fact, it probably wouldn't be. You might have less things. You might have more things. But there's something, and probably several things that are combining together to frustrate you. And they're threatening, if you let them, to ruin your Christmas and steal your joy. I hope it's nothing serious. For some of you, I hope that your biggest frustration might be that you ordered your gifts online, and they haven't got here yet, and you keep checking the tracking number, and now you're not sure they're going to get here on time, and so you're frustrated. But for some of you, it's something a lot more serious. Some of you have lost people that you loved since last Christmas. And now this will be your first Christmas without them, and you're not sure you're ready for that. Some of you within your family has been torn apart because of debates over vaccines and masks and should we gather, and we can't do this and we can't go there and we can't do that. And now everybody's bumping heads and nobody's gathering together. Some of you have been diagnosed with something that you never saw coming. And now in the back of your mind, you hope it's not true, but you know that this could be your last Christmas. And you're not sure you're ready for that either. As you look at Joseph's story, there's one thing that kept him going, one thing that he kept returning to over and over again. Matthew chapter 1, Matthew records it like this. After he had considered this, meaning after he thought about his exit strategy to get out of all this, after he considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary home as your wife, because what is conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will give birth to a son, and you're to give him the name Jesus, because he will save people from their sins. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. So here's Joseph, and he's thinking, how do I get out of this? And all of a sudden, this angel shows up, and he says, hey, you need to just follow through with the plan. Here's what you need to do. And then he says, this baby that's going to be born is going to have two different names. One is going to be his proper name. The other will be a description of who he is. So his proper name will be Jesus, which means to save people from their sins. That's a reference to his mission. That's why he came to earth in the first place, to save lost people. But the second name there, Emmanuel, is kind of a description of who he is, and it means God with us. And so over and over again, Joseph had to remind himself that he was playing a part in this drama that was much bigger than he was, much bigger than he could even imagine. And he had to remind himself that when it comes to Christmas, the story of Christmas is not the story of God, out there somewhere. And it's not the story of God, up there somewhere. It's the story of God with us. How do you keep going when you're so frustrated that you feel like you could scream? How do you keep going when you find yourself in a place that you never wanted to be, and it's even worse than you thought it would be? You remember the story of Christmas, and you remember that the promise of Christmas is that no matter where you are, and no matter what you're going through, and no matter what you're facing, that God is with us. I told you earlier, there is nothing like the excitement and the potential of an unopened gift. Some of you are going to experience this next Friday. Next Saturday, you're going to get up, you're going to go find your tree, and everybody in the family is going to be gathered. And if you got kids, they're going to be up probably before you are, waiting on you, and they're going to pass out the gifts. And as soon as you're handed that gift that's got your name on it, hey, this could be something really good. This could be the thing that I've always wanted. In rare occasions, it might even be something that changes everything for you, makes your life easier, makes your life better. Maybe it's something you always dreamed to have. But I want you to imagine you got up on Christmas morning, you walked down your hall, you found your living room, wherever your tree's at, you took your spot. Everybody's handing out the gifts, and everybody's got their gifts, and you've got your little pile of gifts, and everybody goes through, and you watch your kids open their gifts, and you watch your spouse open his or her gifts, and then it comes to you, and you just decide, you know what, I'm not going to open this today. I'm just going to wait. I might open it next week. Maybe I'll open it later, but I'm not really going to open it right now. I mean, you're not going to do that. I mean, if there's a gift in your living room with your name on it, you're going to open that thing as soon as you can, if not before you get permission, right? You're going to be tugging at the corners trying to see what it is. Nobody leaves a gift unopened, because there's nothing like the excitement and the potential of an unopened gift. But there's another side to that same coin, and it's this. There is nothing like the tragedy of a gift that remains unopened. And what can happen during this time of year? There's so much going on. There's so many different activities. Or maybe you're caught up with so many frustrations. I was reading just this week, a psychologist talked about the intensifying effect of Christmas. And what he meant by that is things that would bother you in July can devastate you in December. Things that might make you a little bit frustrated in May can just make you over the top frustrated in December. It's like it just magnifies everything. So you find yourself this time of year, and if you're not really careful, either the activity can cause you to miss the one gift that's available that can change everything. Or maybe your frustration with what's happened over the past year since last Christmas, or maybe your frustration with what's happening right now can cause you to miss the one gift that can't afford to be unopened. I want you to stand with me. We're going to do a couple different things as we close today. The first is that if you're here and this gift, for whatever reason, the gift of God's presence, the gift of God with you has remained unopened up until this point, we want you to open it. For some of you, that may mean that you need to just be reminded of what this is all about. For others, it may be that you need to experience that for the first time. And you need to know it's not God up there, it's not God out there. God can be right there with you if you'll just accept His presence. The other thing we're going to do, and every family has unique Christmas traditions. There are things that you do at your house that we probably don't do at our house, and vice versa. And some of those things get handed down. And one of the unique Christmas traditions here at First Christian is we always take a special Christmas offering. David mentioned this earlier in the service. Hopefully you have an envelope. If you don't, there's some out there in the lobby. It looks like this. And what we're asking you to do is just make a special gift. A lot of this will go for paying down some of our debt on the Promise campaign. A lot of it will go to partnering with one of our longtime missionaries in Mexico. And when I say long time, I'm talking 50 plus years. And then as David mentioned, a good portion of this will go to help our friends in Western Kentucky. And one of the unique traditions that we have is during the last song of whatever our Christmas service is that year, we invite people to come up and just place their envelope in the manger as a symbolic way of saying that you're doing this to honor Jesus and honor the birth of Jesus. So as we sing this last song, it's a song you'll know. Here's what we're going to do. If you're ready to give your Christmas offering and you came prepared to do that, you're more than welcome to come up and place that in the manger during this last song. And I'll start it just so you don't feel awkward. If you're uncomfortable doing that, you can use the offering boxes, and you can always give online, and Austin will talk about that in a few minutes. The other thing we're going to do is if you're here for the first time, or maybe you're coming for a while, and you've never really opened the gift of God's presence in your life, we'd love to help you do that. So David's going to be over here, and I'm going to be over here, and if you need to pray with somebody, you want to talk to somebody, you've got questions about what the next step should be for you, we'd be glad to help you do that. Sing with us.